Hello, I'm Erica Nicole, and you're watching Rooted and Rich. And today I want to talk about 6 money lessons my grandmother taught me. My grandmother was born in the 1920s. She was a woman of faith. She had strong faith. She would catch the Holy Ghost in a moment's notice. She was just the most loving person, but the most direct and honest person that you would meet. She did not bite her tongue. She said what she said and she meant what she said. My grandma was a fighter and a survivor, so she wouldn't take no stuff from nobody. But she was so loving, and she was such a great example throughout my life. My grandmother probably retired when I was like 3 years old. So I knew my grandma as the retired grandma that we spent the summers with. Like we would walk to her house after we got out of a summer camp or like a little summer camp and stuff like that. We walked to her house and we hang out. And before we were old enough to do that, we would sit at her house watching movies, and she would fix us lunch and stuff like that. And we watched movies at her house and play. And she had a backyard with a swing. So we would be out there playing hide and go seek and just having a great time. So I have a lot of great memories in my childhood with my grandmother. My grandmother passed away from dementia in 2023, and so she's no longer with me. But I hope this video really does honor her memory because she taught me so many things, and I just want to share those lessons that I learned around money. My grandma never directly talked to me about money. My grandmother ended up getting dementia right when I was going into adulthood. So right when I entered into college, at age 18, my grandmother started to slowly decline with dementia, and she kept that dementia for 15 years. So she was definitely a fighter. And so, I didn't really see her as a working woman in working. I seen her retirement, but I seen the way she loved her family and how she was able to take care of her family through her finances. And so I'm going to share just a few lessons that I've learned from her about money and finances and just lessons that I've learned. So the number one lesson that I learned, and I won't say number one because there are many lessons that I learned, but one of the key things that I learned from my grandmother was stuff was just stuff. And my grandmother, she would shop at thrift stores and she would get the clothes, she would wash them, she would make them nice. My grandma had a business where she would iron and starch clothes so she could take stuff from looking rough to looking great and brand new. My grandmother could fix anything. So like if the light switch was broke, she knew how to fix it. She could just fix anything. And one of the key things that I think is important in this is that we have prioritize stuff. We consume so much stuff. We always want more and more stuff. And stuff is just stuff. My grandmother, she would buy like quality like furniture and quality like certain things, very quality, like quality washer and dryer. But other stuff she would spend hardly no money on it because the stuff was just stuff to her. And I think that's a really good lesson because sometimes we spend a lot of money on a lot of things. And some of it is quality and some of it isn't. But we just spend. And sometimes we have to realize the stuff is just stuff. We don't need that much stuff. Or we don't need the nicest, newest, latest stuff. We have enough stuff. And so my grandma, she didn't have like this air about her of like, oh, I'm only going to buy here. I'm only going to do this or that. She was okay with going to the stores and getting good quality for less price or getting good quality certain things, but then going to thrift stores to, purchase other goods and so that she could take care of her family. Because remember, she didn't make a lot. The next lesson my grandma taught me, and she taught me this in her dementia as well, is know your money, where it's going and where it's coming from. My grandmother in her dementia, when she lived with my parents, so my parents took care of her for most of her life with dementia. She always knew where her money was. Even before she got dementia, my grandma had hiding spaces with money, and she would put her money in her hiding spots. Not her big money, it was in the bank, but put money in her hiding spots. And if you needed a loan or something like that, you could always get money from my grandma. When my grandma had dementia, she would be like, where my purse at? Where my money at? She always cared about her money. She knew where her money was coming. She's like, I ain't seen a check in here. Or I ain't seen my money. Where's it at? And sometimes you guys, we do not know what's coming in. We do not know what's going out. We are not in tune with our finances. We are just making decisions based off of feelings, off of gut feelings. Oh, I feel I can afford that. Or I feel I got enough money for that. Never actually doing any type of math to say like, hey, what is coming in and what is going out. My grandma, I used to watch her sit down and do some budgeting or pay her bills and stuff like that. And she would take her time. She would pay her bills. This is before you had the internet. This was before you had, direct deposit, to be honest. A lot of this stuff happened in the 90s. And so my grandma would sit down and she was very in tune with her money. And that taught me one thing, is that you have to know your money. I remember watching as a kid, probably at her house, Oprah. And Oprah had some guests on there, and they was like, yeah, after a while, I just let other people manage my money. And Oprah's like, nah, I manage all my money. And it's kind of to the point is, no matter how much money you have to be a steward of it if you want to keep it. You have to manage it. Money that's not managed will flee. And so you have to manage your money. And my grandma taught me that we have to know where our money is, where it's going, where it's coming from. And so that is number two. Know where your money is, know where it's going, and how much is coming in. My grandma also taught me. So I told you, my grandma, grew up on a farm, and she worked in people's houses, and part of her life she was a stay-at-home mom, and then part of her life she went to work. But the last job that my grandma retired from, she worked in the airport cleaning toilets, and them toilets probably ain't never been as clean as when my grandma cleaned them. So we probably ain't seen toilets as clean as when she cleaned it. And my grandma, she did not make a lot of money. She did not make a lot of money, but she always spent less than what she made. So she always was able to have money because she made sure the margin between what she spent and what she got was pretty high. So that on the positive side, so that no matter that she was making $10 an hour, and remind you, this is $10 an hour is nothing today, but back then it might have been something. And I'm not even saying she was making that much, but whatever she was making, she would spend less than what she had. She wasn't worried about the latest stuff. She wasn't worried about, the latest fads or anything like that. She just spent what she had. And if she didn't have it, she didn't buy it. And I think that is something key missing from this generation, is we're always trying to get more and more and more. Even if we don't have it, we don't have that pause. Like, I don't have it, because we have buy here, pay later. We have, get it in 4 payments, credit cards. We have all of these things that, that contribute to us buying things that we cannot afford. But my grandma never bought anything she couldn't afford, and she always lived within her means. And so because she always lived within her means, and not just within her means, below her means, she always had money. The other thing my grandma taught me, and this is so important to me, because sometimes I think we get prideful. We want this 6-figure job. We want this business that makes, $1 million business. We want all of these things. But one of the things that my grandma taught me is titles, positions mean nothing. You are to work as if you're working unto the Lord, and that God, He humbles those that are proud, but He lifts up those that are humble. And what I mean by this is that, it doesn't matter what kind of job you have. My grandma had a domesticated job, working in people's houses, cleaning people's houses, ironing people's clothes, cleaning the toilets at the airport, or wherever, wherever she worked. But she did the very best job. She never complained about the work that she was given. And people that had better jobs than her, that had more esteem or more recognition in the roles they were doing, professionals that maybe thought less of my grandma, they didn't work. They didn't understand that she didn't care. She didn't care where she had to work, where she had to start. And I think this is so important, because we have a generation of people that are in a rush to get to the top. They're in a rush to really get nowhere fast, because the top ain't even what you think it is, right? But they're in a rush to get somewhere fast, to try to get to the top, not realizing that the positions, titles don't matter. Are you fulfilled? Are you happy? Do you have peace? Do you have joy? Work as if you're working unto the Lord, because what the titles, they don't matter. I'm not saying that what you should do, what you do shouldn't be fulfilling or meaningful to you. But regardless of where you find yourself in life, because some of us, we've had a career and then we found ourselves Ubering to make money, or we had a good paying job and we lost it. Been there, done that. Things happen in life. Wherever you find yourself, like, You know, titles don't matter. Just go in, work as if you're working unto the Lord, and God will lift you up. He humbles those that are proud, but he lifts up those that are humble. And my grandma had a humble spirit, a spirit of humility, that she didn't care what you asked her to do. She went to work every single day and she took care of business, and she retired well and had money to spare. Um, the only so the next thing my grandma taught me was only loan people what you can afford, because you might not see it again. My grandma only loaned you what she could afford. And really, when my grandma loaned you some money, she literally, when you pay her back, she would go and she would put it in an envelope or put it in a drawer with your name on it. And when you needed money again, she pull out that same $100 she gave you and give it back to you, because my grandma only loaned what she could afford to loan. I know that there are, I call it like the family trap, or like the friendship trap of like when you start making money and you've been around people that have a poverty mindset. They ain't never made no money. They think you're better than them because now you're making money and now you got some income and stuff like that, and they feel like you owe them because you made it, or maybe you got an inheritance from somebody, and now the family thinks like, oh, you got this inheritance, like, you know, buy this for me or help me with that, or you know, they're always calling you because you got some money. But you gotta pass the family test. You got to pass that test, because if you are loaning people, even if you can afford to loan people, loan to people that you want to. Don't be guilted by your money. And one thing my grandma could not be done was, you could not make her feel guilty. If she gave, it was because she wanted to, and if she told you she didn't have it, it meant she didn't have it for you. And so I want you to remember that only loan people the money that you can afford to loan them. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you, that my grandma taught me about money, and this is, I think is key, because this is what this channel is based in. Is like automating stuff, sitting in a way, and not paying attention to it. I say in a couple of videos that I have, automation is key. And so, you know, my grandma had automated her money with, she did the same thing every day, and she was very disciplined. So she may not have had all the automation that we have today and when she was working and stuff like that, but she did the same thing. She was very disciplined. And one thing my grandma taught me about money is that you stick to your plan, no matter who's in office, no matter who's what's happening in the world politically, natural disasters. You stick to your plan. If your plan is to put X, Y, and Z in your retirement every single pay period, you stick to that plan. If your plan is to build an emergency fund of 6 to 12 months, or 6 months or 12 months, you stick to the plan. You do things over and over again, because wealth is built over time with habits of doing the same thing over and over again. My grandma never made a lot of money. My grandma never saw millions of dollars, but she kept all the money she made. She didn't worry about the stuff. She didn't worry about, yes, she bought quality things when it mattered and that she wanted to last, because, you know, I know that buying cheap everything, when it breaks, you spend more money replacing it. But my grandma bought things of quality, and then she was okay with having things that were cheap, things from the thrift store, secondhand things, because she realized stuff is just stuff. She knew where her money was going and where it was coming. She knew how much she had coming in. She knew what to spend, and she spent under that. That's why she could loan to people if she wanted to. If you needed money, that's why she could help her grandchildren get cards, or, you know, with books, or, you know, give them some money if they needed it. They said, "Grandma, help me out." She could do that because she knew where her money was going and where it was coming from. She's always spent less than what she made. Whatever she brought in, she spent less than that. And I know, like, that might feel like, yeah, Erica, you saying this, but your grandma was older, and, you know, she probably had a paid off home, and she did, you know. But at the end of the day, you guys, you have to figure out how to create a margin gap between what you spend, what you make, and what you spend. That is where wealth is created. It's created in that margin of having more income than you have expenses, and retaining that money and then putting it in places where it can grow. So that is how it's made. There's no other way than that. You know what I'm saying? And you can widen the gap. Like, you can make more money, right? Or you can spend less. So, but you have to create that margin, because that's where wealth is created. And then titles and positions, you guys, we got to get out of our head that we deserve anything. Because, and I know I have to talk about on the channel, there's probably a video out there talking about you deserve, inspired retirement, you deserve these things. But honestly, you guys, we are so entitled. We are in a microwave society, and we're so used to just getting things so quickly and having things just readily available for us. And so I think it's important that we realize, like, it's okay to not have the fanciest title. It's okay to start out from the beginning and do grunt work and, figure it out and learn. So many times I think about, people jumping into business and jumping into careers, and no matter what you do, you are going to have to learn. You're going to have to start at position A. And if you skip levels, life will knock you back to learn the lessons that you didn't learn in between that. And so that is why, titles don't matter. Learn everything you can from the position you're in and then go for more. But don't get caught up in that. Get all you can out of where you are and then look for more, but don't get caught up in titles. My grandma didn't have a fancy title. She actually just cleaned for a living, but she had more money than a lot of people in our family. And my grandma was able to take care of her family and actually leave an inheritance to her children. And so it is so important that we don't get hung up on titles, or we don't be like, I'm not doing that, or I refuse this or that. Like, you can refuse, or you don't have to. But I'm telling you, life is going to make you go to A, B, C, D. Even if you hop up some steps, you're still going to have to learn things in there. You're still going to have to grow, because some of the things that you need for level D, you get in level B and C. You get what I'm saying? And so it's good to just, like, not to say that you can't jump and you won't get promotions and stuff like that, but some of the lessons, they're hard lessons, and it's good to learn them while you can. So wherever life puts you, I know some people, you used to have a good paying job and now you lost your job and you're trying to figure it out, or, you had a business and it was working and now your business is failing, or it's not making the money that it used to make. I understand, like, it's okay. Just continue to not worry, don't stress yourself. Don't worry about titles and positions. Just work as if you're working unto the Lord. And my grandma taught me that. And then only loan people what you can afford. You guys, do not loan people money you can't afford. Do not give money to people when you can't afford it, because when you need it, they won't have it. And a lot of times when we loan money to people, a lot of times they're making poor decisions, or sometimes they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, as I say all the time. And so they may not can pay you back when you need it. You get what I'm saying? So only loan what you can afford, because even if you had an agreed upon time frame, you can't need that money, because what happens when they fall through, when they don't make the promise that they said they would. You can't need that money, and you don't want to damage relationships that you find valuable from loaning people money you couldn't afford to loan, or loaning money out of guilt, out of a guilty conscience or guilty feeling, knowing that you should have never gave them the money. You should have said you didn't have it in the first place. And then my grandma, she stuck to her plans no matter what. My grandma stuck to her plans no matter who was in office, no matter what natural disaster happened. She put her money away. She paid her bills on time. She took care of business no matter what. And I think sometimes we get too distracted by all the things on social media, all the things that are happening around us. This president's supposed to save us, and that president's going to save us, but none of them can save them. You got to save yourself. You got to do the things that make a difference for your own life, because only you can. Nobody is going to save you. Nobody is coming to save you. If you don't have an emergency fund when you experience job loss, when your business is not doing well, you're not going to be able to ride the wave if you don't create the roots and have a firm foundation. And so I implore you to stick to your plans, to stick to your financial plans. If you're putting away money, if you're doing that, stick to it. Don't worry about who's in office. Don't worry about, what's happening internationally. If the world comes to an end, it comes to an end, but you can't worry yourself about it, because if you do that, you will allow your emotions to rob you of your future growth, because you pulled out too soon. You saw the next stock market crash and you're like, I got to take my money out of stocks because it's crashing. And next thing you know, that then crash, and bounce back up, and people that made triple, quadruple what they had, and you can't get that time and that rebound back. So stick to your plan. All right, you guys, thank you for rocking with me in this video. My grandma just taught me so many different lessons, and I felt compelled to share them with you all and to let you know what my grandma taught me, because she meant the world to me, and I am just honored to be able to share a little bit about her on this platform. So let me know what you think in the comments. Who has inspired you financially, and who has inspired you financially, and what have they taught you? Drop it in the comments. If you have somebody that inspired you financially, or a family member, a loved one, a teacher, anybody, drop it in the comments. What did you learn from them, and who are they? I'll see you in the next video. Bye.